What the heck just happened there?
There you go. That's what happened there. Hey, everybody. That's the beauty of a live show, isn't it? How are you? Welcome, everybody, to Spiritually Raw. We hope everything is going well with you. We hope life is going well. We hope you're manifesting everything you want. We hope you're attracting everything you want and everything's working out. But just in case it's not, we have Catherine Edwards here to help you out with that. So she's here today. We have the Manifest Show going on today. So action steps to manifest anything you desire. Also in the description below, there'll be some free ebooks that we have for you. The 12 Universal Laws Decoded and the Ancient Wisdom for Modern. Oh, what's the other one? Abundance Alchemy. Yes. I'm getting in my rhythm. Everybody bear with me. But yeah, this is really cool. We wanted to put together these shows for you to really help you live the proper life that you're destined to.
Mind, body, spirit.
Mind, body, spirit. You know, and often when you think in manifest, people think, okay, well, you know what? I want this, I want that, I want a lot of this, and I want a lot of gold in the bank, and I want a big house, and I want a big yacht. But you know what? It's really only as good as how healthy you are, isn't it?
Most definitely. Well, not only that, though, I mean, from our perspective, you know, everybody talks about getting the 5D and wanted to get the 5D, this D, whatever, 4D, 6D. The point is, though, the only way that you're going to ascend or elevate your consciousness, you have to have a clear mind. You have to be healthy. On the inside, you want to feel healthy on the outside. And not only that, but you want to be able to enjoy it. So what good would it even be if you got there and you weren't able to live your life to the absolute fullest? And that's why, Catherine, I think it's so important. It's really all a combination. It's the whole enchilada. From my perspective, I don't see how you can have really one without the other. How can you raise your consciousness, but your body is sluggish? How can you raise your consciousness if you're constantly feeling like you're crap? So I think that, especially, you being a holistic biologist, incorporating the mind, the body, the spirit, and the prosperity, it's really, it's integral. It's of the most important.
So let's help some people here today, Catherine, and thank you for taking a minute to come on and share your wisdom with us. We really do appreciate that. It's really a privilege to get to know you in this lifetime, and we want others to experience how you've helped us along so many. But let's talk about that for a minute. Health. Not a lot of people talk about health as it relates to quote unquote 5D. Mm-hmm. Can you shed some light on that for us and how they all really do intertwine?
Absolutely. And it's such a pleasure to be here because you two are such a walking example of putting everything that you talk about into practice. And I see our lovely friend Hillis is in the chat. Hi, Hillis. And we all manifested having this lovely working relationship together. So that's cool. But I think it's really important to talk about health because manifestation is such a biggie. And it's a bit like when you talk about meditation or any of the other spiritual practices, everyone's going to have a different opinion. There's so many boundaries, rules, regulations that people put through it. And, at the end of the day, we overcomplicate a lot of things. But I'll obviously be careful with the words I use because of the platforms that we're on. But I think all of our people who are tuning in, they understand that things are really difficult for us these days to keep our mind, body, spirit pure because we're being attacked from the airs, from the water, from the food, from the frequencies, let alone any other things that they might decide to poke in or on you. So for most people watching, the challenges today are very, very different to what they were 30, 50 years ago. And therefore, we have to change the way that we deal with them. So, I used to think it's ridiculous that as a species, we needed nutritionists or dog nutritionists or horse nutritionists. But we do because so much of the information we've been fed is so wrong. So nowadays, we all know things like Google are not good sources of quality information. And this is what I've loved about this journey is it's sort of peeling away the layers. But if you're physically out of balance, that affects every aspect of your connection. So most people have heard of the microbiome now. There's little microbes that live in our gut, but actually in all our organs of our body. But those are programmed by the information that we're taking on and toxin overload will program, I call them like the good gremlins and the bad gremlins. The bad ones will take over and make you make poor decisions. They'll make you feel lacking in energy, so you don't want to exercise. They'll make you crave the wrong foods. They'll make you depressed and anxious and not feel confident to step into your own power. So when we get rid of the toxins from our body, and that's an ongoing process, it's not something you do once and then stop. It's an ongoing daily process, really, for most of us living where we do. When you get rid of those, your mind works clearer, so you can tap in to the energies, whether you want to call it the quantum field, the matrix, the universal field, God, whatever you want to call it. You can tap in and start getting the right messages, because when our body's physically unhealthy, and I'm not talking about aesthetics here at all, I'm talking about that vitality, because that you can feel a person that's vital, that's got that vital energy. It's got nothing to do with, you know, we all know, April, we know those men that you might look at a picture and they're not that great looking, but you meet them in person and their energy and their aura just
vibrates the frequency.
This is what we're talking about. And there's so much attention from the powers that are no longer, I like to say, that has tried to take this away from us. But when we take that power back, we are so powerful, and you can't really step into the manifesting field if you're starting from that very low vibe place.
Catherine, I want to ask you this, and I've just started seeing a lot more of this, and so people say things of the nature of like, well, kind of like the gut is like the second brain or something like that. Is there any truth to that as far as how that operates?
Well, massively, and they're almost reversing it now, because obviously science, and I'm not talking about their science, I'm talking about proper science, where you're staying open-minded and constantly open to learning new things, have shown actually that there's more messages that go from our gut up to our brain than our brain down to our gut. So actually the gut is controlling the brain more than the other way round. And it's really, really complex. But the beauty is when you follow a few key simple principles, it's really easy to actually get it back into balance. But you do have to generally make some changes in your life, because, for example, you know, if your cells at a cellular level are full of toxins, however many nutrients you're pumping into yourself, they can't get into the cell because the cell's already filled with the bad stuff. A bit like if you've got two sponges, two buckets, and one bucket's full of dirty water and one bucket's full of clean water. Take a sponge, squeeze it, put it in the bucket of dirty water, let it go. It's saturated with the gunk. If you then lift it up and put it in the clean water can't flush through because it's already full. That's what our cells are like. So yes, Jay, you're really right, but actually even more so than people thought about, because it's a bit like them talking about the junk DNA that we don't supposedly use, although we are all relearning and remembering how to access it. Actually, our gut is crucial to every part of our health, physical, emotional, and spiritual. And if you don't get that right, and it's more tricky for us now because most of our food isn't even real food anymore, then unfortunately, all the rest of your spiritual development or practices or manifesting is going to be a little bit trickier.
You know, it's so interesting. I never really thought about it much, but it's connecting so many dots. My mom was always very same size, strong woman in the mind. But the one thing that would always take her down, and it would hit like a lightning bolt, is the belly.
Yeah.
And she was forever, her whole entire life, dealing with, we didn't know really then the cause. We thought maybe it was the smoking or whatever. But now we know it was a whole bunch of stuff. Ulcers.
Yeah.
Ulcer after ulcer after ulcer after ulcer. My whole life, I always had stomach issues. Like I would even say chronic stomach issues. And it was the hardest thing in my life, health-wise, to get under control. Because you don't know, is it for the longest time, is it stress? Is it coming from food? Is it coming from the water? Is it, is it genetic? And that is actually something I want to ask you, is something like that genetic, number one? And how, when something is in the center of your, it's your core, literally, right? So it's the center of your whole body. once something happens, whether it's too much acid in you or you feel it immediately in your stomach, it literally can take you down like a
Titanic?
Yeah, take you down like the Titanic. Exactly.
Yeah, so many good questions there, April. I mean, first and foremost, you've hit on something really important. It's not called our core for a reason, as an accident. It is the core to bringing everything together. And if we look at the, the chakra system, the meridians of the body, it's such an important area for connection. And connection is everything. If you haven't got those connections at a cellular level, at a nerve level, between your internal and external environment, then everything breaks down. And a lot of top sort of holistic specialists, really, they might be traditional doctors, but are really understanding the root cause of things, are showing that this communication, this cell-to-cell communication connection is key. But the good news is it's highly, highly, highly unlikely to be genetic. So all the research is showing at the moment, they're putting it, and obviously Bruce Lipton has led the way in a lot of this, but at the moment, they've shown that less than 5% of all diseases are genetic. So that's good news.
That is great news, actually.
And they are expecting that figure to go down as well. That's probably an overestimation. However, a lot of lifestyle choices are hereditary. So you've only got to look. I used to work in Finland. And you've only got to look at what people in UK would consider a healthy breakfast and what people in Finland would consider a healthy breakfast. Completely different. So the thing is, a lot of a lot of ways of eating. There's a standard joke that diabetes runs in my family, and the answer is no. The problem is no one runs in your family. No one's and so
I love that.
Environment you grow up in, lifestyles, just like if you grow up with pets, you're way more likely to have animals in your life as an adult. If you grow up in a family where they respect food and good quality food and taking the time to sit down and eat it properly so you can digest it with a good energy around that, then you're much more likely to carry those habits forward. So it's not hereditary at a genetic level, very unlikely to be. However, in terms of habits that are formed and quite ingrained in us, and I think where that fits in so closely with manifestation is we know that sort of 95% of our lives are run by our subconscious mind. Mm-hmm. Therefore, some of those habits are pretty ingrained in us, and people hold on to those belief systems. The amount of times when I'm working with clients, they say, well, I eat really healthily. And then you sort of say, well, let's go through that in detail. Everyone's idea of what's healthy food is completely different, and the results show for itself. So but there's so much that can be done for people just getting back to some good, safe principles.
I want to ask you this because this is just such, at this stage of our lives and probably many people's lives, gut health is just so critical. Mm-hmm. And you think about it. So it's like, well, what's the right diet? How much do I eat? When do I eat? Is it? And it's like, it's just such, it's like a big mind screw, right? So, but intermittent fasting, can you give us the concept of that? And is it a thing? Is it something that we really do need to take seriously? Or is it more like, because then there's the other people that'll say, no, eat every 2 hours and da-da-da-da-da-da. And so what do we do here? What's probably the best way for the person that's saying, look, I got to address this gut thing? What's a starting point from there that they at least should be open to?
That's such a good question. So the answer is, it depends, and let me explain why. So all of our starting points are different. So I'm a bit like you, April. My weakness is always my gut, which is probably why I've specialized so much. But also working with animals, I've seen without a shadow of a doubt, when you sort the gut health out, all the other problems just disappear, literally.
Totally. Yes.
So with your question, Jay, in terms of intermittent fasting, so the reality is, if anyone, and thank you so much for those of you that are joining, please do feel free to ask questions, but any of us watching and living in what we would call the developed world, although it's a bit of a misnomer, isn't it? But let's just go with that. Anyone who's sitting there and having the luxury for watching this conversation now, most of us overindulge hugely on the eating front. And the same goes for our animals as well. So, for example, it's really dangerous for dogs to eat more than once a day because their pancreas and digestive system isn't set up for it. But lots of people with little dogs.
Hold on.
What?
Did you just hear what she just said?
Feed them more than once a day.
No, don't. It's really serious. And
overfeeds them, Catherine.
I know, and overfeeding is one of the shortest ways to shorten all our lifespan for all of us. Now, I'm the opposite.
Can I interject that just for 1 second?
Yeah.
If I showed you the amount of food that he feeds our dogs, and I keep saying, but their bellies are only like this big, right?
This is about our guests. This is
matter.
about our guests. Let's spend time with our guests.
And this is why I work so much with animals, April, because the thing is, animals teach us so much. So
yes,
in terms of all our different constitutional types, so I'm an iridologist, and one of the great things about iridology, looking into the iris of the eyes, is you can really tell people's animals' inherited strengths and weaknesses. So generally speaking, Jay, yes, all of us should fast. But how we should do that will depend on our body types. And Bryce and I have had some discussions of this, and we'll be having more probably on Gnostic in her health series, about different body types need different types of fasting. So, for example, I've got the type of body type where I need to eat little and often, but it's really beneficial for me to delay my first meal of the day until at least mid-morning. So a lot of people will fast by eating not too late at night and then delaying your breakfast. So say you've got 14, 15, 16 hours, however much you can stretch it. But then once you're up and running, someone with my constitution needs to then eat quite regularly. Other people are completely the opposite. But most people, if they're starting on a health journey, should start with a type of fast. So this is why it's really important to either really research yourself or work with a professional so that they can do the right type for you. Because if you've got existing health conditions, you need to really have some advice about how to do that safely. Because with fasting, if we don't allow our organs to rest, our digestive organs to rest and have space, and that's different for each species about how much time they need, then basically they're overworking. And it's a bit like a car. You know, if you have a car and you only do 10,000 miles a year, it's likely to last a lot longer than a car that you're doing 100,000 miles a year on. So same with our bodies. If we overuse that digestive tract, it puts a lot of stress. And stress is such a huge problem for all of us now, because a lot of stress comes from our lifestyle habits, like eating at the wrong time, the wrong things, or too often. So I would say definitely look into fasting. And one of the ways that I work with clients is it's all about tuning in based on your lifestyle, your constitutional types, the climate you're living in will have an impact, etc. But basically, most of us would do a lot better eating probably half the amount we do in a day, but making sure that's really good quality food, eaten in a way that our bodies can process and digest it.
2 questions. Is there any truth to this at all? If your chakra, your root chakra, your sacral chakra, if they're blocked, that's also causing gut issue. That's the first question. And my second question was, what's your thought on fruitarians? Because is that an overdose of sugar constantly?
Right. So in terms of the chakra, absolutely everything is linked. So if we've got a blockage in our body energetically or physically, it will show up as issues. Thanks, Hillis. So this is where holistic practitioners really come into their own. And I'm not just myself, there's loads of brilliant ones, but this is why so many people have amazing jobs, say with chiropractors, because even though you might think a good chiropractor is not just working on your spine or your physical muscles and bones, a good chiropractor is also knowing how to open up your energy channels as well. And for example, in horses, you can see horses, a lot of horses die, it's awful, from a disease called colic, which is where their intestines get twisted. And a lot of that problem is actually blocked by blocked energy channels. So the vets don't know to look at those things.
That's interesting.
Wow.
So for a human, this is why we've got to look. This is why you cannot separate physical, emotional, spiritual health, because there can be so many different causes. So if you've had emotional trauma, that will cause your energy body to contract in certain areas and store that trauma there, which will also then have an effect of your fascia just contracting and protecting. So this is the beauty of it. There's so many different ways that people can address this. And I love, April and Jay, the way that Louise Hay used to say it, is if you imagine you want to spring clean your house, you've got the bedrooms, the bathrooms, the kitchen, the living room, and you know that you've got to get round all the rooms in your house. But where each of us choose to start will vary based on our existing priorities. So, for example, if you've got someone coming round for dinner, you might want to do the dining room and the kitchen first and leave the bedrooms. You know, if Daniel Craig's come to visit, I might do the bedrooms first. Not really. We know what he's like. But, you know, so this is the whole point. Some of us need to start with exercise and moving our body because you've got to clear up those elimination channels. Some of us need to start with some detoxing. Some of us need to start with reducing the amount of food and really changing. So this is why most programs that really work and really cause a reset are designed really well to have a period of time where there's a lot of thought that's got into what you're putting into your body. And there's various different ways you can do that to allow your organs to reset, and also to clear those blockages, whether they're physical or emotional or energetic.
Now, with that being said, does fasting, is that a requirement, or does that help the animal reset their gut and intestinal tract as well, or they have a totally different system?
So that's a brilliant question. It really depends on the animal. And this is one of the main areas where people get it horribly wrong for their animals. Because, for example, a carnivore like a dog or a cat, a dog is an obligate carnivore. So dogs can eat different things in different areas. Cats are complete carnivores, so they have to eat meat. Now, if you fast a cat, it's really, really dangerous. They can go into kidney failure really quickly. So cats' whole bodies are designed to eat little and often. And anyone who's got cats, I've got 5, cats in the wild cannot eat rancid meats. They can't cope with the bacteria in them. So anyone who's got cats will know that if the food's a little bit off or not quite fresh, the cat will smell it and it won't eat it. And they're far better at picking that up than us or dogs. Dogs are more scavengers. So they have a different digestive system where they are designed to fast. So a weekly fast for a dog, it really increases its lifespan. Most of us don't do it. I very rarely do it with mine.
Wow.
I don't do any feed time once.
Is that literally one day a week that you?
One day a week where you would just give them, make sure they've got good water. Some people would give them something like a good quality bone broth, but no solids, because in the wild, their digestive system is really designed to eat a lot, digest it quickly, and then rest. So if you've got a healthy adult dog, and I teach all this in my dog nutrition course, you should be feeding it once a day, normally later on in the day, but not too late after its main exercise. Not puppies. We're not talking about puppies or dogs with health conditions, because you need to bear that in mind. For a cat, fasting a cat is really, really dangerous. You can cause serious problems very quickly. So a cat needs very fresh food, feed little and often. Yeah, a horse, if you fast a horse, you'll kill it. You know, the horse is grazing.
Horses. I got you.
Be eating all the time. So this is where really understanding the species you're working with is really, really important.
Hold on.
What?
So, Catherine, when the dog is looking at you like they're absolutely starving, and even though they already had breakfast and it's like 3:00 in the afternoon and they look like you haven't fed me in a week, do we ignore that?
Well, I would say it depends what you're feeding them. So it depends if you're feeding them proper, well-balanced raw food. Kibble, anything out of a tin or a bag, is not food.
Yeah, that's what we do. Can I get back to like what by infinite design as human beings? Because without passing judgment on people, like kind of tagging on what you said about the fruitarian.
Oh yeah,
I'm always just wondering
how are we supposed to be living? Are we designed to eat meat? Our infinite design, or are we supposed to be plant-based vegetarian? I know there's so many mixed things, or certain body types are supposed to have meat. It depends on your body type. How are we by infinite design supposed to process all this?
I think people will always answer for their limitations, and we've got to take into account what someone does in a survival situation is very different to when you've got choices and thrives. And you will hear so many different opinions on this. It's something I've been studying for years. So comparing what supposedly, although that's all up for grabs now, our ancestors did in the wild. So we know Eskimos live virtually all on meat, and we know other people live all on fruit. We'll come on to the Fruitarians in a bit, because that's a really good question. And you've got every variation in between. But if you're a tribe living somewhere where you're 100% dependent on yourself to survive, just like a dog would, what wolves eat in one area of the world is completely different to what they eat, because you have to go on what's available in your environment. That's completely different to what you'd look at for health. And I've been researching for quite a long while the blue zones, which is the humans, the areas of the world where people live the longest. And all the research shows that it's mainly plant-based, very little meat, home cooked,
or grown from the ground, or organic.
Exercise is a big issue in it, as well as is community. So in my view, there's a huge amount of people talking about the carnivore diet at the moment. It's, in my opinion, and I've studied it, it's so dangerous. If you've been eating a processed Western diet and you go on to any change of cutting out a lot of the processed crap, you will notice a difference. But that doesn't mean it's healthy for you long term. No human, regardless of what history you look up to, unless you're an Eskimo, for example, is designed to eat mainly meat. And Eskimos have got some of the shortest life expectancies out of any humans on the planet, because obviously their environment's very harsh and their diet is very limited. So for me, I think there's so much evidence that shows a well-balanced, good variety. But some people's gut health is so bad initially that they can't digest the vegetables and the fruit well. So what you have to do in those situations is, that's where some of the superfood supplements and well-designed cleanses come in, like juice cleanses and things. But again, it's like anything. You can't say every juice cleanse is good, because it's not. There's really good ones and there's really not so good ones. So this is where, if you're not experienced in this, work with someone initially the first time that can talk through the pros and cons of the different approaches for you. But certainly all the evidence I've shown is that for long-term health, and I think all the people that I've seen argue the opposite for highs amount of meat, is basically that's a difference about, you can pull out as much evidence of what someone would do if they're starving to death, but that's not the same thing as where we're all looking for long-term health and thriving. And let's face it, most of us have got a fair amount of choice now in terms of accessibility to food. And so therefore we can make different choices to people that are stuck in a forest and can only eat whatever they can find there. It's not comparing like with like.
I'm so glad that you brought up the blue zone. And again, the reason why we're having this conversation for everybody that's listening, because we're talking about manifesting. And manifesting is not just about money. It's manifesting your life. It's manifesting your health. It's manifesting your happiness. And if anybody's been researching or doing any research on the blue zone, what I noticed, Catherine, even in depressed areas where, it's not metropolitan, let's say, these are the happiest people on the planet.
Yeah.
They're living the longest, and they are the happiest people on the planet. That is truly living 5D. They've created their own little blue zone, their 5D blue zone world. They have the mind, body, spirit, and prosperity connection, whatever level of prosperity it is to them, because a lot of them aren't living in, what we would think as mansions and, diamonds and this and that. Their prosperity is their overall well-being of abundance.
How do you break someone out of that, Catherine? So when people come to you and they're saying, Catherine, I got this gut issue, how much of it, just as a general, is it them really kind of just waiting for you to reassure them that they need to do the right thing versus, are they talking themselves out of it are they looking for you to say, no, it's okay to keep on this diet and just balance it out? I mean, how many people are really just not really there yet? And what do you think as a society, do people, at what point do you think, or are we at that pivotal point in our lifetime in existence right now where it is like, look, you know, if you're not watching this show, if you're not going to CatherineEdwards.life, you know, you're shit out of luck. I mean, where are we at in humanity right now, as far as what you think, as far as really addressing this seriously?
To be really serious, look, all of us are very similar age. We're all in our 50s. And we learn a lot as we go through life. You know, when you're young, you think you're invincible. Your body's strong. You haven't filled yourself up with toxins. You've got a lot of natural resilience there. But that's changed now completely. So my children's generation, my children are in their early 20s, they're like so much less healthy in general as a generation than we were at that age. But the reality of the situation is that everyone can do this on their own if the want's there. But we all know the level of misinformation is absolutely huge, and there's a lot of shaming. So when I work with someone, I never insist on plant-based or not meat or anything. We have a discussion, and then we teach people to tune into their body and really start to see how it feels, because the one thing humans are really good at is fighting for their limitations. But by the time someone's come to work with any one of us or anyone else, normally they know deep down they want to change, but we all need help along the way. We all need that accountability partner, because we are a social species. And the thing is, we are designed to be learning from our elders, and that whole process is broken down. And April, you know, the blue zone information is so true what you said. It's consistent. These blue zones are in completely different locations all over the world. But the consistent factors is they all lived on a hill and they walked everywhere. And they had to do a lot of exercise, which is what I would call normal daily life exercise. Now, I've always been a big advocate, because I don't have time to go to the gym, but I chop wood and I muck out horses and I walk dogs for miles and I rake loads of leaves and I pick trees. You know, my holistic friend Timo says, if you're our age and you can't climb a tree, you're in trouble. You know, our bodies are designed to be able to climb trees and get away from predators. So a good test for anyone watching you is, if you had to, could you run and get away, climb up a tree? Now,
that is a good test.
Oh man, that is a good test.
Yeah.
Holy
I'd still be eaten in my family, because my children would run a lot faster than me and get up
Step
there.
on your head. Get away, get it knocked out of the way.
Predators, I'm a bit tougher, so eat them instead. But in all seriousness, so going back to your question about where people need it, the reality of the situation is, as a species, we've never been so sick. The mental health issues are off the scale, and these are real. You know, the autoimmune diseases are generally very, very easy to sort out if you get the right help. It's more difficult for some people living in certain areas. So if you're living surrounded by agricultural land where they're spraying pesticides and herbicides, you might need to move to sort out your autoimmune disease. But in general, if you can, you know, so some could be drastic lifestyle changes, like having to physically move location to a safer place to live. You know, I know in America, there's the Mississippi is like anyone who lives along the Mississippi, you're going to get cancer in a much higher rate, proven, because it's so contaminated.
Wow.
So I think the reality is we all have to say it. Even myself, you know, I live in the countryside, but I see the chemtrails being sprayed multiple times a week over the house. I have to constantly detox my body. I try and get the best food I can. I'm setting up a food forest, been working with Jim Gale's team on that. But that's going to be a few years before I can really be self-sustainable there. So we have to do the best we can. And one of the things I think is really important to people, a bit like all this absolute scaremongering, and I think you two have done the best out of everyone I've seen in trying to say to people, step away from the fear. Because whatever your starting point is in health, whatever your starting point is, the fantastic thing is all the studies show, whether you're talking about soil health or human health, you can turn that round very quickly with some very simple lifestyle changes. And most people need a little bit of an accountability partner along the way to help them cut through the complete misinformation.
You know, what do you say? Let food be medicine.
Let food be medicine.
Let how you, whatever that was said. They said, but that's a real truth. You know, we were traveling and we were at a place where that's their whole thing. You see, like how we see doctors' offices. They had holistic doctor's offices, and you'd
Yeah.
go in to get your herbs. You
Yeah.
go in to get your herbs. You wouldn't go in. So like they're
like anti-prescription.
They're very anti-prescription, but they know they need it. I mean, there's critical crisis care there, which is good. But just for your day-to-day stuff, it's all about herbs. And it was really it was very refreshing to see.
But not only that, the thing that we noticed like immediately, because they do not have chemtrails. There's literally virtually no pollution in the air. This is St. Thomas, if anybody's wondering. And the food is all organic.
Totally different tasting.
So even when we were on vacation, so obviously we were eating everything. There were, like no holds bar. But there were no side effects. The sugar, the desserts, we were eating, chicken.
You didn't get blow up like
not at all.
Nothing at all. Like
you just felt great. There were no, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm going to get sick from what I just ate.
You
didn't have any of that.
Catherine, here in America, I don't know if you had it in England, but it was a big sale when we were growing up as a kids, and it was about the 5 food groups: the bread, the rice, the pasta, the sugar. Make sure you eat this.
Pyramid.
Make sure you have your big 3 meals every single day. So that's not ended well, right? We can all agree on that part of it. Was that from your perspective, because you're a very balanced person, and I've gotten to know you as a very balanced person, was that quote unquote nefarious forces, or was that just misinformation that really went wrong?
100%, in my opinion, nefarious forces. And the whole thing about what we've been, that you get calcium from your milk, well, you can't get anything good from pasteurized milk at all, particularly when it's full of adrenaline, and we all know the consequences of
I got you.
So the thing is, it's when you look into the history, and one of my, I love listening to Matt from Cultivate Elevate, because he's really young and he's just got it so great. You can trace all this back to the same controllers that have taken out all our homeopathy. Do you know? And I had a lovely interview last week with one of my friends who's a brilliant homeopath. And, in America now, they've just banned homeopathic medicine for eye treatments again. The herbs, ivermectin comes from wormwood. They discovered it. Wormwood's a plant, and it's a really fantastic natural parasite repellent and loads more. And then what they do is make a synthetic version of it. Ivermectin may have been brilliant. With all the publicity now, I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole, because it's still made by the pharmaceutical companies, and they all know the people buying it are the ones who are more awake, let's say. And so what's the easiest way to knock all ours out? Contaminate something like that. I don't trust anything.
That's crazy. So you're so right about
that food pyramid is so misleading. My daughter did her exams at school because she's a top athlete, and what they're still teaching our children about nutrition is an absolute disgrace, because they 100% know it's wrong, but they won't admit it. You've got cancer patients, I'll be careful how many trigger words I say, but that are told that diet's nothing to do with it. It's just ridiculous. We know this information, and it's being fed down us. And unfortunately, there's some brilliant doctors, there's some brilliant vets, but they're so restricted about what they can prescribe or tell their patients, because they're so legislated. And if they step out of those narrow boundaries, they'll be struck off. And we've seen loads of that over the last few years.
I would say that people watching this, and there's been so much going on over these last few years about spirituality, prosperity, your health and wellness, who's doing what to us. But we found out through our journey is just this whole mind, body, spirit, prosperity. I mean, they're all one and the same, really. You know what I mean? They really are. You have to connect them. You can't go for the moon prosperous if you're just out of breath, and you're not sleeping well, and everything like that, or your mind's not there, and you
pineal glands.
You can't do this. And again, we do this in a way, and we wanted to bring Catherine on and really just kind of really get this information out here with no judgment, but really out of love, and letting you know that if you can find a way to, we're walking this path, you know what I mean? So we're doing this, we're taking these steps. We're saying, oh, that don't work, don't use that. You know what I mean? We're doing that. Catherine, being an accountability person for you, what I tell you, you've done, and I always want to, when we speak about this, I always want to thank you for this, because you've dedicated your life to really be on the front line of this for people. It's not an easy road to do. It's testing these supplements out. It's making sure, well, that's not good. I mean, we've had some conversations about what's really in it, and you've gone to that. Do you think from your perspective, you getting to the level, because I've met other people that do what you do, but you're at a different level, in my opinion, our opinion, do you think it's your maybe a past life thing that draws you to this, that really gets you to never really give up and not look at it as like, that's just my thing? Like, how do you feel like where you got to where you got to?
That's a really good question. I think it is that. And I think also, you know, I was brought up, you know, a lot of people would say it's very harshly, but, you know, you make your own decisions and you live by them, and you don't blame other people for them. And I think why I'm so passionate about this, and why I'm really hoping we're going to set up a show to really dive deep in this on Gnostic, because then we can talk about all the uncensored stuff that I've been completely banned with a lot of everyone else and talking on YouTube, is because we've got to get back to this. You know, I've had so many run-ins in the year. I used to have my own health food shop. I used to sell herbs and natural products for animals and humans. And I had my website taken down so many times because all this stuff that's so proven, you're not allowed to say that natural substance has medicinal benefits. And it's horrendous, which is why we have to, you know, put it on platforms where we're not censored. But I think the thing is, with those of us that are sort of, you know, everyone's role is really important in this. Every single person, and we don't all need to know everything. This is why I think I was so inspired by you, April, to mix the manifestation with the health, because it is all completely linked. And the thing is, we've all got different bits of the jigsaw puzzle. The reason I'm so passionate is because my whole family are animal mad. And so I grew up with a lot of animals, and I sort of made a lot of my career working with animals. And the thing is, whether you're talking about children or animals, they're dependent on us for the choices. An animal, your dog can't go out and choose what it wants to eat. It can't choose what medications you put in them. It can't choose what shampoo the groomer uses. Can't choose what company or exercise it gets. And the thing is, I really feel so strongly for those that, you know, us adults, do you know what? I would love to help anyone, because we all only, when that blindfold comes off, the whole world changes for us. And I'm still learning every day. But when you've got animals and children and vulnerable old people that have had those decisions taken away from them, I'm not going to give up, because it is, going back to your earlier question, Jay, from all the research I've done, I hate to say it, I think it's deliberate. It's deliberate. They're trying to keep us sick. If you're sick in body, you do not have the resilience to stand up. If you're financially broke, which is why what I love what you do so much, you know, it's been a big thing I'm still trying to break through, is the financial side of things, because I've got a lot of belief systems around there. If they can keep you controllable through your health and your wealth, you are stuffed. They've got the power back. And we are all working so hard with all the listeners to return that power. And it's easier than we think, but we have to do it together. Share information genuinely. Each just take a little bit and do that, and share that bit, so that we're all not overwhelmed, because we can't do it all. And so I think, you know, we now know enough. I don't go into all the problems now, because I know enough to know it's deliberate. They're deliberately poisoning us. They're deliberately keeping us weak. They're dumbing us down. It breaks my heart to see what they've done to the youngsters. I think it's absolutely disgusting. And I will say, I know this is really controversial, but I don't care. A lot of the spiritual community will actually accentuate that. So if you look at every youngster that's got ADHD or autism or whatever, there's so much evidence to show that's related to toxins, the microbiome. And where you've got spiritual communities sort of saying, well, they're showing us a new way. Well, at what cost to these poor children? At what cost? At least give them a choice. And if we know we can take some toxins out, then they can have choice in their life how they live it, rather than some of these difficulties being forced on them.
That is
absolutely.
That is a very fascinating perspective on that, for sure. That is.
I don't know if there's any truth to this. I can only experiences that I've witnessed, but I'd love to hear your perspective on this. Do animals pick up the owner's illness?
Yeah. And not always, because some animals are more susceptible to doing that than others. So dogs are very, very well known to pick up their owners' illnesses. And what I would like to say to that is I don't think any pet parent should feel guilty about that, because if an animal's doing that, it's energetically, I wouldn't like to say it's choosing to, because I don't believe they consciously say, oh, I'll take that awful disease and do it, but they're energetically allowing themselves to accept it. However, and personally, I've been working in animal communication, animal health for well over 20 years now, and I've seen a huge uptake into that. And I think whereas there's always a susceptibility because our energy fields are so linked when we're together, and quite often they're trying to be the early warning sign, the canary in the cage for the human, because they really do care that much about their humans. But I've also seen a shift over the last 10 years, really, where that's been shifted artificially by the terrible contaminants that are in our animals. So the wormers now are so toxic, the pokes are so toxic, the spot-on treatments, the food is absolutely appalling, the water, most of the stuff the groomers use, you know, they're bombarded by poisons that energetically their shield is, in my opinion, so much weaker. So I think, unfortunately, again, it's an interesting one, April. I think we've got to be really careful to not excuse making bad choices for our animals for the fact that they've chosen to take this on for us. So
I totally agree. That's another reason why I was wanted to address that too, because again, it all comes back to manifesting, right? Because you want the best. You know, sometimes we treat our own body 10 times worse than we treat our animals, right? We could give our animals the best food in the world and the most love you could ever exchange, right? But it's similarly, if you yourself are not in the best of health, your animal ultimately feels it in one way or another.
Well, Catherine, I want to ask you this real quick, and this may be a whole other show, but I do want to just tag on this quickly. Do animals' life expectancy, is it short? Are they literally human shock absorbers for us to really help us live longer so we can fulfill our mission, meaning that when we get emotional stress or physical, they comfort us so well, right? Is it that is their life expectancy so short because are they absorbing a lot of what we're giving them just to help protect us?
I think this is, for me, the ultimate spiritual manipulation. So I think that the thing is, we like to think that as an excuse for that. But I think that for me, a lot of the reasons we're in the deep doo-doo that we are as a species is because everything we talk about is humanity. And we have to talk about all creatures, great and small, the greater planet. So we seem to have so many conversations, even in the spiritual field, where we seem to think animals are here to serve us humans. And I 100% disagree with that. I think it has to be a symbiotic relationship. And I think the problem is it's very easy to say they've chosen to come here to take on our burdens. And I think that's very different to what I'm talking about, where there's an energetic choice in it, where we've taken a lot of the choice for them. The life expectancies of our animals has virtually halved. You know, people think it's good if a Labrador lives to 12, it should be living well into its 20s. And we've come to accept that. And the problem is we as humans are not doing our research properly. You know, people get animals and they don't even do the basic amount of research about what's needed to keep that animal healthy. And in the old days, that would never happen because the animal would die, you know, and they needed their animals to, you know, provide food or to pull their carts or work the fields or guard the house. But now I think the lack of consideration we give to our animals' needs, I think it's absolutely disgusting. I really do. You know, if you're taking on another being and you're taking all the choice away, and any of us that are parents, we know our children do what we do, not what we say. So if you're telling your teenagers that alcohol's really dangerous and they should stay clear, and you're drinking alcohol every night, they don't trust you. Well, an animal is seeing how you treat yourself, like April said, how you treat yourself physically, how you talk to yourself. And that animal knows they're completely dependent on you. It's like being a captor. They are. That's why they're called captive animals, really. And pet's a nice word for a captive animal. And if your captor is not capable of making good decisions about their own life, that animal doesn't trust you to make good decisions about yours, however much you tell them you love them. It's a bit narcissistic, in my opinion. You know, real love is putting the research in, looking at the eyes through your dog's eyes, not what you've decided that you want your dog's life to be. So that's my little thought on that.
What a healthy perspective.
Real quick, kind of on the subject, off the subject, but I think it's important because it's probably in a lot of people's houses. Before we close, I just want to get your thoughts on this. You know, there's plugins that you stick in the wall to make your room smell fresh.
Lethal.
That's what I thought.
Lethal. Literally lethal. They cause fits, toxins, liver failure, kidney failure. Because dogs and cats, and don't even get into, like if you've got a goldfish or a hamster or something horrendous, they're so toxic. And this is what I mean. You know, people have done the studies now. They know it is, and they're still selling them. And they're toxic to us as well. It's just that because we have a longer life expectancy, the problems take longer to show up. But there's so many animals I deal with that have horrendous allergies, fitting, hair loss, digestive issues, behavioral issues. It's a major cause of behavioral issues because it's not just the plug-in air fresheners are horrendous, and a lot of scented candles are too, but also the cleaning products that you're using and the washing products and everything. And it's just bizarre that we've got to such a state where you can't tell someone legally that milk thistle's good for you because that's against the law and you'll get banned. And yet you can sell a perfume or an air freshener that's got hundreds of carcinogenic, hormone disrupting chemicals in, and that's completely legal. And if you say something about it on social media, it's misinformation. The world's gone mad, and we've got to get back to basics.
I totally agree with you. So everybody watching, raise your hand if you feel like you need a gut health partner.
I think everybody needs a gut health partner.
Raise your hands if you have a computer, and you can click on CatherineEdwards.life. Listen, everybody, this is so important, so critical. We talk about 5D. You want, look, associated to something, you know, whatever it is, it's all association. We knew pragmatically as we moved through life at our age, we said, look, you know, we want to go to the moon financially. We see an abundant world. That's how we see it. But we also know that for us to do that, we needed a strategic person in our life, like a Catherine, to really understand the parts of our lives that's not we're totally designed to do, because you just don't know it all. You know?
I wish I knew Catherine 10 years ago.
Right.
I would have saved myself years and years and years of
and would be retired.
Issues.
but in all seriousness, though, you know, really, everybody, I encourage you, go to CatherineEdwards.life. Get this, is so critical. Do it for yourself. If you're relying upon someone, we always say this. If, like Catherine, you made a great point. If you got children, show them the way now.
Yeah.
You got another chance. This is the way to hit the reset button with not only yourself, but the people that rely upon you the most. Yeah.
Oh, no question about it. Absolutely. And, you know, like I said, I wasn't serious and joking. I said joking, but I honestly do wish I had known you 10 years ago, not only just for myself, but we probably would have saved my mom a tremendous amount of issues that
so many people
went through, in and out of doctors, all that. It was a constant reoccurring battle of the gut.
And well, Catherine, you know, we appreciate your life service to humanity, all that you do. You're a real soul sister. And thank you for continuing to keep on the good fight. And we hope everybody really does take this conversation seriously. Visit your website, at least explore how you can help them.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say the same to you guys. I'm going to be inviting you back. So we've got so much more we can talk about this, because you guys are the manifestation pair as far as I'm concerned, because you've really worked out what works and what doesn't. So it's such a pleasure to know you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And together with Catherine's help, we are turning the universal key to global harmony and creating a unified world. Thank you so much for tuning in, and tune in often. Tell all your friends, and most importantly, may all your dreams come true. And kindly hit the like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next show. Much love.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.